Welcome to Rethink Podcast. This is your guest host, Dave Runyon. I'm here with Jim and Cole. So Jim asked me to do his podcast, and that's going to be going up soon. And when he did, I just realized I have a great chance here to ask Jim some questions that I've been wondering. And I spend a lot of my time working with pastors and leaders. Jim, I think here's how this works in our culture. You know this.
Are we going to flip the switch or flip something?
Yeah, we'll flip the switch. Put it on TikTok later.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Now I'm asking you the questions. Here we go.
Yeah.
So I do believe this, Jim. Like, I think that Flatirons has given you a great platform to speak in the life of other leaders. And so when I started to think about a lot of my friends who are pastors and who do ministry, and I was just like, hey, this is a great chance to just pick your brain a little bit. And I want you to share some of your experiences with some of the other faith leaders here in Colorado and around the country. So I'm just going to hop in here, and I'm just going to throw
Prepared to be disappointed.
I'm going to give you 4 or 5 questions. And the key to happiness is setting the bar low. And so
I told my wife.
My expectations have never been lower for what's getting ready to happen right now.
So good.
So, all right, you have had a very interesting ministry career.
Yeah.
As you look back on all the different things you've done in ministry, what's like the one season or even maybe the one year that you just look back and you go, man, that was the most life-giving season of ministry that you've had personally?
Yeah. You told me that this question is coming, and that's really, really hard because there's high points and low points, and then it kind of gets all muddled in. I think looking back, and it's really interesting because he's out in the hallway right now, but when I was a youth pastor, and I actually think that a lot of lead pastors that seem to be effective come out of a youth ministry background.
For sure.
And the only explanation I can have is because in the youth ministry, you don't have to pretend, and you can be real and authentic, and you got to get to it fast, and right, because just the attention level, and if it doesn't make sense, kids will just say, "Tap, I'm out,"
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of cut my teeth in ministry. And I remember pouring my life into some kids, and then hauling them all. We went to Kenya for 3 weeks and lived with Maasai. And Jesse was one of those guys. And there's like 4 or 5 young men and women out of that trip that are doing ministry and doing missions across the world right now. And every time we'd say, hey, we have this guest speaker coming in, grew up in Jim's youth group, and it's like, looking back, I didn't realize that at the time. Looking back, that was probably the most effective, most enjoyable time of ministry ever, because you're pouring yourself into young leaders and then stepping back and then watching them, God use them in great ways. And I've always said Flatirons is just youth ministry for adults.
Yeah.
Because somehow I think that, when you teach students and kids, you tell stories, right? You got to tell story after story after story. And then there's something that clicks in our mind. It goes, when you teach adults, you just have to teach theory or, whatever that is. But Jesus was the greatest storyteller of all time, because he knew that, hey, let me just take this metaphor, this parable, or this, it's kind of like this. And everybody kind of leaned in and went, well, that makes sense. And so that's what we try to do here. But I cut my teeth on that. I learned how to teach God's word through stories. Everything is a parable. I learned that in youth ministry.
Yeah, and I think my observation has been there's something about those high school and college years when people are forming their worldview and who they're going to be. They're making these decisions that don't seem massive at the time, but they're having a massive impact. They're sending their trajectory of their life in a different place. There's something about walking with people and being able to speak into their life during that season that's unlike anything else. Then we get to adult stuff, and people get into these rhythms and routines. And then, adults, when you're there in crisis, I see a lot of like openness to change, but it's so much harder. It's so much harder to like pour into the life of adults. There's something really special about those high school and college years.
Absolutely. The other part, I think one of the best points is when I decided that I would be a pastor, but I would not play golf. I think they're mutually exclusive. I hate golf.
Yeah, that's a character fault for sure.
I just think that there's so many, life is a metaphor, right? And you can only say my life took a dog leg right so many times, right? Or I mulliganed my life or something, and it's like, then but I think as you go out there and live your life, and I learned this in youth ministry, everything is on the table. Every experience is on the table. Every dog, you walk your dog, somehow Jesus is in that. You raise your kids, sometimes Jesus is in that. You go hiking, somewhere Jesus is in that. You pick up a pine cone, somewhere Jesus is in that. And it's like you got to keep on learning.
Yeah,
and looking
that's
through those
the right
eyes.
word. There's some kind of curiosity that we have in those formative years that a lot of adults lose.
Yeah.
Just that wondering and the curiosity and the questioning, and that's what made it so alive for me, of being around people in that season of life. Because I would agree with you. Of all the things that I've done, my favorite, most personally life-giving season of life was when I was doing youth ministry.
Yeah.
There's just something so sacred and special about it. So,
Yeah.
all right, I want to get to a few of these. So,
Yep.
And I know you like to talk, so I better go fast. So you
Shut up, Cole.
Sorry, no, I was laughing at something John C. said.
I'm sure your listeners may or may not be aware of this, but you went on a nice little 6-month break here recently. And if you want to hear more about that, Jim's shared about some of his learnings and what happened leading up to that and what's happened since in kind of the January series of the Flatiron Sermon. So you can go listen to that. But I'd just be curious about this. You're coming off this 6-month sabbatical, and Cole, you might want to jump in on this one. How are others experiencing you differently since you have come back?
Well, they're not right now because the sabbatical that keeps on giving, right? So I get back in January, and then we got about 3 good months in there, and now we're
back.
We're
back to sabbatical.
We're back to sabbatical,
So Cole's the only person, because he comes in here and does podcasts
Yeah.
with you, that's actually. But no, I mean, Cole, you tell me, like, what have you noticed?
It's interesting when you just said like your favorite season, the most life-giving season, was when you were pouring into these leaders, and then you could step back and watch them go.
Yeah.
And since coming back from sabbatical, it's been a short amount of time, but I've seen you step back and let people go more than before. Before it was like, no, you've talked about this. I need to control this. I need to make sure that this is excellent and good. And like, this is mine to protect.
Yeah.
You're now trusting people more. And that hadn't clicked until you just said that your most life-giving time was when you were able to like give what you had. Like as a leader, you're supposed to give out. Job's not supposed to fill other people up. It's supposed to like, you just keep giving out. And then you step back and let them do their thing. You've been doing that more and more over these past couple of months, and watching things like Krieger's running with, and Krieger, who's not tech savvy at all, is running with trying to do an app, and you have Stefan trying to. You have leaders in your life.
What?
Yeah, Stefan's trying to do stuff. But you have people in your life, Jesse, the lead team, that you're like, no, I'm here to like pour out. You guys take it from there and do stuff. I'm going to step back.
Yeah.
And from that, I mean, we're seeing how many more people are jumping in and watching online stuff, and you're having less and less of a hold on those things. You're letting other people do stuff. You're letting Corey run with stuff. You're letting the tech team run with stuff. Jesse's running. Like everything you're doing right now is like, here's what I'm going to give. From there, I'm stepping back.
Let me just.
That's encouraging. That's got to be encouraging.
It is. I don't want to give myself too much credit.
Yeah, don't worry, we won't. We'll edit that. We're going to edit out a lot of that.
What I mean is, it's really tough. It's a new muscle memory for me sometimes. I know it's worth it, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. There's sometimes you're going, it's like my ideas and opinions and the old ways I've done it, they just didn't disappear.
Yeah.
Probably the best thing that Harv, my counselor, told me, he was also my sabbatical coach, was don't go with your first edit. There's holes in my tongue. I'm just going,
Yeah.
You really, that's what we want to do. That's what we do. Oh, okay. So I am trying to listen more and trying to empower more. And it's actually relaxing because it allows me to spend more time watching like Tiger King.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's a question that's going to bring you back down to earth, since we just inflated your ego a little bit.
Yeah. I won't do that again. I promise, Dave.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Thank you. That'd be great, Cole. So, all right, what's it been like to now learn the impact of your past leadership style on others? Because I know you came back in here with your staff and you started to meet with them and to process a lot of what had happened before and what you wanted to look like going forward. So what was that like to learn the impact of of some of your voids on the people that you work with?
It's still,
Your face changed.
well, I think it's what every leader doesn't want to look at. I met with everyone on my staff, took 20 hours of meetings in small groups, some one-on-one, some on little, and I really heard a lot of people. Probably the most meaningful conversation is one of the women on our staff said to me, Lisa, she said, Jim, for the first time, I think I knew what racism felt like. And it was just to be dismissed, just like you didn't matter. And I didn't do that on purpose. I had this tunnel vision. I was operating in a panic. I got to get stuff done because I feel like I'm failing, things like that. And so I steamrolled people. I had a nickname, Buzzsaw. I didn't even know that, but if you mess with me, and here, probably the moment that kind of broke the camel's back is a year tomorrow. It was the Tuesday before Easter, and I was so frustrated and in a panic about Easter. I brought all my campus pastors, all my worship team into a room, and I unloaded on them about how inept and how ridiculous and how selfish and how lazy and how stupid they'd all been doing. And if they just get on my page, we had the most important day in the Christian calendar coming up, and they were screwing it. And
Right.
and when you look back at it going, do you understand just the absolute absurdity of what you're doing? It's like, we're going to tell people Jesus loves them and I'll fire your, it's just
Right.
like, but that I realized, and I didn't really realize it in the first half of my sabbatical. I had to work through all the anger and pain and surprise of actually being on sabbatical. Not so much being on sabbatical, but how it came about.
Yeah.
Until I actually started looking at my own stuff in the mirror and then realized that. And I've spent a lot of time. And here's the cool thing is I expected the meeting with all my staff when I came back. I said, here goes the tour of shame. Remember on, I won't say that the Queen walks through the streets and they throw stuff at her yelling shame,
Right,
shame,
right,
shame,
right.
shame. I didn't mention it.
That's good.
Good.
Yeah.
But I thought it was me that, and it ended up being, I say the tour of grace instead of the tour of shame,
Yeah.
because people were like, there you are. Like Cole, I think maybe you looked at me and went, that's the leader. That's the first time, that's the leader I signed up for.
Yeah.
And he was gone. When people go to HR going, they weren't mad at me. They were going like, where did he go? Is he all right? And I didn't see it. So I think I dismissed a lot of people. I didn't listen to a lot of people. I ran over people, and it had very little to do with their job performance. It had to do with my panic and fear of failing.
So at the root of that, like, how much of that is just when we get our identity intertwined with our teaching and what people experience up front? Like, because I felt some of that anxiety too in the past of like, when I blur in, when I allow like how I teach or what happens up on that stage to become part of who I am, it causes a lot of anxiety in me.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how much do you struggle with that?
Oh, it's and I think any leader who says that his identity and his performance don't have anything to do with each other is, it's just not true. Here's the thing about pastor world, okay? And I think I didn't understand this till I became a lead pastor. I didn't understand this as a youth pastor or an associate pastor or a teaching pastor. They all carry their weight. There's something about being the guy at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And here's what it looks like. When everything's going great at church, who gets all the glory? God. And second, my team. Way to go, team, all right?
Right.
When things aren't going well, who gets all the blame? Answer, not God.
Right.
Me, right? When giving's up and attendance is up, when just knocked it out of the park, it's like, praise, all glory to God, and all of y'all did your job so much, all right? There's not a meeting with God or a meeting with your staff when attendance is down or giving is down or anything is down. There's a meeting with me, right? To go, hey, we hitched our wagon to you, right? And then for a long time, I was the 20, 22, 25% growth a year guy.
Right.
And then when that didn't happen anymore, they're looking going,
Yeah.
you
for sure.
changed. You changed.
Yeah, the
right?
amount of chronic anxiety that exists for lead pastors, and I have a lot of friends that are lead pastors, but in the chronic anxiety is just this background anxiety. It's not, it's not the acute stuff that's just right in front of your face. It's just sitting there in the background. And what that does to you over time and how that weighs on you, it's really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
And so I think like getting aware of like, what is the background anxiety that's been existing in my life, and being able to name it and being able to talk about what are the root causes of it, and are they just myths, the things that that are the root causes of some of this chronic anxiety, or is it real? And just having some friends to process it with is a big deal.
Going back to the walk of shame or walk of grace, I think it's because you approached it that way. But there's leaders, whether they're church leaders or not church leaders, that right now are like, I'm the leader. I need to spearhead this. I need to take this on and charge forward. You came into those meetings not like that.
Yeah.
What had to change in your mind for you to get to that spot? Because you could have came in and go, hey, I get that you guys put me on this, but when I'm back, here's where we're going. You didn't once mention here's where we're going in those meetings.
Right.
What changed in your head? Because there's leaders out there. I'm thinking, I had a conversation with Taylor's boss. He's a baller. He's great. And he was talking about a lot of day trading stuff that he was doing. And he was like, back when I was doing really well, I would get done and I'd be like, look at what I did. But I lost sight of why I was doing it, because it was me that was doing it. And it's like he's had to change his mindset. There's people like that out there that don't have anything to do with leading a church or leading anything like that, but they lead people, they lead a staff, they lead a business. What had to change in your mind for you to rewrite, okay, this is why I'm back. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm going to change this. And this is how I'm going to bring everybody else with me.
Well, I think that's it. Leaders go first. That's a key phrase in all this, all right?
Yeah.
I had to go first. You know, there's a lot of, you can say, I did this, I did this, I did this. And then you just go, but, and then there's the other side of the coin too. And I had to just lay that down. I'm not saying we don't have to get to it, but there's windows where it's like, hey, yeah, there's plenty of blame to go around in an organization, all right? And then there's seasons where you have to go, we'll get to that. It's kind of like, I remember my counselor looking and going, okay, if I had an affair, all right, and then my wife were in counseling and I was coming back and talking about it, and all I could do was own, I really, really messed up, okay? Now's not the time to go, but you weren't the best wife ever, right? It's like, oh, shit, that may be true.
There's a pro tip for all our listeners out there.
Oh, pro tip right there. And I'm like, there may be a time, but the time to come in is right now. I got to own my stuff. You guys counted on me as a leader to take you to a certain place, and I didn't do that well. And it's not your fault, all right? There's reasons, and we might get to those, but it's not an excuse, and it's not a fault. I can honestly say probably the best takeaway from my sabbatical that I would have lied to you beforehand and said, yeah, my identity is not in my career or the growth of my church or the growth, whatever it is, all right? I would have been lying to you. I can honestly say to you right now, I would rather, like our Christmas party this year was one of my first times up. It's one of the first times I ever going to address the whole staff together.
Yeah.
And like 10 minutes into the Christmas party, my wife got a migraine. She says, Jim, I think I'm going to throw up. And I looked at my executive pastor and I went, you're going to have to do the speech. I'm taking her home. And I got some criticism about that, right? I did. This is your time. I think you really cost some points with the staff. And I looked at that person and I went, you know what? I have chosen the church so many times over my wife wrongly. If I wrongly chose my wife over the staff this time, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
All right. I would rather spend time with Robin and my kids and God than sacrifice those things to get a few more butts in seats and a few more dollars in an offering plate. If I have to choose, I'm going to choose Robin, my family, and God. And it's probably put in the opposite order of that, but that's how it came out. All right. I would rather have that than say I sacrificed the most important things, but I got a big church. Because at the end of the day, you're worn out. You got a big church. You're on sabbatical, or worse, you're fired, or you're thrown out, and you look back and so they'll move on without you. The most important thing in my life is God, Robin, and my family.
Yeah.
And they always, including God, took second place to ministry. And I think I've straightened that out a little bit more. So because of that, I don't have the pressure. So now I can look at Cole and like, Cole, you got that?
Yeah.
Go with it. Maybe not be the way I wanted to do it, but.
Yeah. Well, I've appreciated your transparency and vulnerability through this. You know, Flatirons is the largest church in Colorado. And so a lot of people look up to this place and they put you and some of the leaders here up on this pedestal that you never asked to be on, right. And just say, oh, if only I could get there, then I'd be really happy. And hearing you share about your journey in the way that you have from the front with your church and in other venues has been really powerful for a lot of leaders in our state, because they've been able to go, oh, wow, maybe I should be careful about what I wish for.
Yes.
And maybe like just the myth of like, if I just got there, then I'd be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you've given a real gift to a lot of leaders in doing that. So I'm really grateful for that.
I think I heard Andy Stanley say one time, he said, if you're praying for your church to get big, you're praying for your life to get really hard.
I love that.
But let me say this. In some ways, because I've got a staff around me and layers of leadership and things like that, I'm removed from a lot of stuff that my dad, who was a pastor, had to do, right? And so for the man or woman out there leading a faith community of 50, 100, 200, they're doing everything. Like my dad ran the vacuum cleaner, prepared communion, decorated the church, cleaned up the church, took out the trash, mowed the yard, preached the sermon. All right. So for the man or woman out there leading a church or an organization, it's their life is a different set of heart.
That's right.
So the idea they idealize somebody going, oh yeah, big church, big whatever that is, it's like it's a different, but
Makes
it's
total
not,
sense.
but it's not less hard to be the leader of a 200 person church or a 20,000. It's just, you just exchange,
Yeah.
you exchange what's hard.
Yeah. That's great.
I just want to value that.
It's amazing. Yeah, I think it's a great point. You got to pick your poison, or you don't get to pick it. You just get to deal with the poison that the dealt the deck you get dealt with.
There's poison at every level.
That's right.
Right. Be careful.
Yeah. And then there's awesome stuff too. I mean, there's
yeah.
great stuff. People that just like complain, oh, being a pastor is so hard. You're always on 24/7. There's so much great things about doing the kinds of stuff that you do. And so I think that's important to mention that as well. So, all right. So give me something that you haven't touched on yet. What's one thing that you would say to a pastor who's just starting into full-time ministry, that's just starting into this work?
Well, the thing I'm going to say is the thing that if somebody was said to me in ministry, I wouldn't have listened either.
Okay, good.
And the reason is because I would go to these conferences and they'd all say what I'm about to say. And then I would sit out there and go, yeah, but you wouldn't be where you would be.
Right.
I wouldn't be sitting in your seminar if you hadn't done that stuff. And that is, don't sacrifice the wrong things.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that is like, I mean, it is probably the biggest tragedy in pastor families is you chose church. And by that, I mean your church career, your ministry career, because I don't think Jesus would ever command you to do this to your family. You chose your career track and self-imposed, or bad leaders around you imposed it, and you said, okay, and you sacrificed your marriage, and you sacrificed your kids, and you sacrificed your health on the altar of a ministry career.
That's right. And I think it's tempting to do in ministry. It's tempting to do in work. In ministry, there's some other dangers because you can spiritualize it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Right. But I think this is a
how
danger.
can my wife complain? I'm out there getting people out of hell, something like that.
Right.
I always say I've never had an affair with a person.
That's right.
I have an affair with my job, and I call it my job. It just happens to be a church, but you can put in bank, you can put in coaching, you can put in hobby, you can put in whatever that is I ran away to something that made me feel good and told me I was successful because I couldn't feel successful at home.
That's right.
All right. And again, I think that famous last words, right? You look back going, man, if I could get it all back, I would spend more time with my wife and your kids. Hey, here's the answer. You can't get it back. They're gone.
That's right.
They're gone. You may be able to resurrect some stuff and heal some stuff, but you don't get their high school back. You weren't there. And that's not to beat anybody up, but I'm talking to the people on the front end. I'm talking to the Coles, who has a 18-month-old.
No, he's not even. He's like 15.
15 months.
15-month-old.
All right.
Well,
don't miss the twos.
Yeah.
Because you're off doing groups at your church. Yeah. Because that's your group.
Well, and all three of us have been around people that are coming near the end of their life, and none of us, I guarantee you, have ever had somebody who is nearing the end look at you and go, you know, if I just would have kicked butt more at work.
Yeah.
If I just it always goes back to, I just wish I would have been more present and more intentional with the people closest to me every single time.
You look at Kobe Bryant, and it's like we can go back and watch all these highlight tapes of Kobe Bryant, but people are talking about, no, look at his relationship with his daughter, and with his wife. And it's like that's what we want. Like people are focusing on that now, and it's like, yeah, you could have this awesome career, but at the end of the day, that's not what.
Yeah, and the reaction to what happened with Kobe, I think, was fascinating on a cultural standpoint, but a lot of it was those pictures and some of that stuff. It was a prophetic moment to remind people of what really matters. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, all right, I got one more for you, and then we can call it good. I'll be done hijacking your podcast. So, all right. So if you go back in time,
we're not going to air this. What are you thinking?
Good call.
Way too vulnerable.
Way too vulnerable.
All right. So if you could go back, what would you have wanted to have told yourself 1 month before you went on sabbatical?
1 month before
all that went down in your life, what do you wish what do you wish somebody would have been able to speak into your life?
Well, if anybody would have said it to me, I wouldn't have listened because I was in such tunnel vision at the time. But if I would have had that light come out of heaven going, time out.
Yeah.
Think. A lot of people said they tried to talk to me, and I said, you might have. But I wasn't listening right then because I was in a panic. Right? Yeah. It's like, oh no, the wall's coming in, right? But if I could have stopped a month before sabbatical, so that would have been last March. I would have sat down and in total terror looked at my elders and went, I'm not doing well. And if something doesn't change, I'm going to fall apart. My ego wouldn't let that happen. My pride wouldn't let that happen. But you're saying if you could go back and wave a magic wand, could you go back? I would have looked at him and went, and see, they've all said after I went on sabbatical, we knew you weren't doing well and we didn't protect you, right? Yeah. But you're Jim and you go a mile a minute, you know? Right. It's like, but if so I'm not blaming them.
Right.
But I wish I would have said, can I have a timeout? I hope it's safe. I'm not doing well. I'm really tired and it's coming out bad in probably more ways than I can ever imagine. I think I need a break. Now, I had great leaders over me. And so it would have gone well.
That's right.
I didn't see it. There's some men and women listen to me going, my leaders would fire my butt on the spot. Yeah. And so what I would say is if you can't go to your leaders, you got to go to someone, counselor, right, or another pastor who's safe, or a friend outside of your church circle, and go, hey, I'm not doing well.
That's right.
And somebody that will love you enough to say, I know. All right. And how can I help? What can I do? Can I go sit down with you and whatever that is? I don't know what that is.
So good.
But I think it's the same way with marriage. You know, you have to look at going, boy, a week before I had the affair, what do I wish I would have told myself? You know, it's like.
That's right.
What would have had to change? So like, as I'm thinking through that for myself, it's like my ego would hold me back from doing that. Mm-hmm. I would have a very hard time being like, no, I'll just push through. Like, that's what I would think.
Sure.
I would do it.
That's what I was doing.
Yeah. What would have to change in your mindset, in your ego, for that to like come about? And bring it down to that marriage level of like, I can be like, oh, I'm not doing well, and then me and Taylor have a blowout fight, and it's like, oh, I could have changed that 6 hours ago by how I approached it. Uh-huh. But in the moment, I'm like, no, I just got to keep. So like, what do I have to? I'm trying to answer this question for myself, but like for you, like, what would have had to change in your mindset to get you to that point to be able to go, okay, I'm going to set my ego aside because this is more important?
I think it goes back to pick your poison. All right, suffer now, suffer later. All right. What's the worst thing that could really happen if you went to your wife and go, hey, I want to call it up front. I'm not doing well. Mm-hmm. I got some really dark thoughts. I haven't pursued him yet, much, whatever that is. Right. But I'm really, really afraid that if I don't look at this, or we don't look at this, it's not going to go well. All right. So that could cause a big argument. Okay. Or 6 months from now, there's like, hey, I wanted to tell you I wasn't doing well, but I was afraid to. But you know that business trip I went on, right?
That's right.
Or that, hey, I'm calling from the police station. I told you I thought I had it under control. I'm not. I got pulled over for DUI. Whatever that is. It's like, that's a worse conversation. I remember my whole tattoo story when I got this first tattoo and just had it outlined, and I posted it on something, you know, probably MySpace or something back in the day. And my wife saw it, and she called me. I was in Kentucky at a board meeting. And she said, what's that? And I said, it's a tattoo. And I was like, that's not what we talked about. And she says, I said, yeah, it is. It's bigger than what I thought, whatever that is. She goes, I thought that we were one. I thought that your body's my body. And so we talked through it all. And then I hung up and I went, this is over a tattoo. It's like, I thought we were in this together. What would that conversation be like to sit on the edge of bed and go, hey, I slept with the wrong person. I blew up my whole career because I had too much to drink. It's like, you got to pick your poison. So you have to just go, okay, I'm going to sit on my leaders and go, worst thing could happen is they could say, all right, how can we help? Or I really think we make up going, they'll look at me and fire me. I think that's imaginary for 99% of the cases. Right. And the people that would fire you don't want to be there anyway.
That's exactly
right. So I think you have to say, it's going to hurt now or it's going to hurt later. Choose your suffering, right?
That's right.
So you get up in the morning, you go to the gym every day, or when you're 70, you can't walk around because you're out of shape, right? So you choose to suffer now. I think that was Jordan Peterson. Yeah. It's like, I wish I would have chose to suffer before I was forced to suffer. I'm glad I was forced to suffer, not at first, because it hurt. But then looking back, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I just wish it would have happened different. I wish I would have initiated it, as opposed to it felt like an ambush. Yeah. I'm so thankful for it anyway.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Does that make sense?
It's really, really good. Everything you shared, I think, is more valuable than you think for leaders, especially people that are trying to figure out this whole weird world of doing this vocational church thing that
I can't think. I don't know anything about. You know, I've worked for a church all my life, and my dad worked for a church. My grandfather worked for a church. All right, so I can't think of anything lonelier than being the lead pastor of a church, because I remember my mom sat my wife down before we got married and said, don't ever have any friends inside the church.
Yeah.
And my wife just cried. But that's her experience, going, you can't have friends. It's lonely.
That's right. It can be incredibly lonely unless you're just
I don't believe that, by the
really
way.
intentional.
Right.
Really intentional. And I think that's why having people outside of your organization, I'm walking with a lot of leaders right now in faith, government, business leaders. You've got to have some voices outside of your own organization, because especially when you're making the big decisions, and you gotta, the only way to have that is to have relationships and to have friends. And so I just encourage people, grab a few close friends. And it's so easy when you're doing the ministry thing, you just end up with 350 friends. Right. But I think having the discipline of grabbing a few people and meeting with them on a regular basis and pouring out your life to them, I don't think there's anything better that pastors and ministry people, I don't think there's anything better people, period, can do. And so
I used to recruit you and say, why don't you guys start coming to Flatirons? Because you go to another church. Why don't you start coming to Flatirons? Dave, I don't want you to ever come to Flatirons. Here's why. It's nice having a friend outside of Flatirons.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. I love being able to be a sounding board, and it's been fun to process a lot of your story and
awesome.
all that stuff with you. So
thanks.
All right. Well, hey, thanks for being here on Rethink with Dave Runyon. Next week we'll be back with your regularly scheduled host.